Welcome to the Investing Bros. I am T Shroom, and we are seeing some downward movement for cryptos across the board. We're going to be getting into what this means and what we could expect coming next. We're also going to talk about why this is happening. And I'll tell you at the front end, it is very, very interesting, and you're going to want to stay tuned to try to understand every little bit of what's going on in crypto and what could potentially be happening to your portfolio very, very soon. Let's go ahead and get into the crux of the matter here. Let's go ahead and check out the charts here for Bitcoin. I've got Bitcoin pulled up here on a 1-hour chart. And as you can see, we are trading below the dynamic reactor on Chart Prime. And as you can see, Bitcoin has sliced through here, slicing through the 43,371 line of support that was drawn by that dynamic reactor, slicing through, flipping it red on the 1 hour, and now is trading all the way down at about 42,000 even, actually, right now. Very interesting. Now, what also happened down here on the MACD is there were a failed bull cross on the 1 hour. And in the Ichimoku, we actually got down into the bearish zone, has been able to pull out of that since, but was there for a few hours, actually, down there in the bear zone of the Ichimoku for the 1 hour. Now, zooming out to the 1 day is also going to be very interesting, but let's take a look here at the Market Dynamics Pro indicator from Chart Prime. And I'm going to tell you here in a second how you can actually get access to these indicators. But first, let me just show you. This is the next big line of support. Now, what I'll say is that we got a huge wick down, as you can see, on the 1 hour, a very, very destructive wick down to 40,000 even. And if there's not a ton of support for 40,000 even here on this 1 hour chart, as you can see, but it is a psychological number, 40,000. And then if you do zoom out on the daily, which we will in a second, you'll see that there is some support. It's actually out on the monthly. But right here, down at 41,600 is going to be the major line of resistance for today. If we break down below, major line of support for today. If we do break down below 41,600, then likely we're going to head a good bit lower. And I'll go ahead and stop there because I want you guys to realize that we do a much more in-depth TA at 8:30. So that video is actually already out, and you can go watch it right now. That is my partner TA Tim, Tim's TA. He does much more in-depth analysis of the technical analysis. I'm going to attempt to show you a fundamental analysis of why things are going the way they are. We've got Kelly Kellum in the chat. What's up, Kelly? Everybody say hello to Kelly. It is good to see you, man. Got to see Kelly by surprise in the flesh the other day down in St. Pete, Florida. That was a lot of fun. But let's go ahead and take a look here at the daily chart for Bitcoin. And then we will actually let's go ahead and look at the monthly chart because I think it was the weekly. I was looking at these earlier. I wanted to make sure that it's okay. Yeah, so you can see here, you're also finding a good bit of support from the wick on the November 27th candle for the week of November 27th. Okay, so you are getting some support there for that 40,000, right? That wick lower. From where we are now on the weekly chart, you can see that we're hanging out in the equilibrium zone for Chart Prime. Now you might be thinking, T-Shroom, what is Chart Prime? Whenever I try to look up Chart Prime on the indicators, it says I have to pay for it, or there are free ones, but they're not the ones that I see you using. Excellent. Well, here you go. If you are clicking on our video here, the Investing Bros video, you go down to the description, you can actually get Chart Prime 45% off, right? Which is the best discount available for Chart Prime. There's a lot of other influencers who use Chart Prime because it's such a good indicator, but they actually have less of a discount for you because Investing Bros, we were one of the first that got with Chart Prime and helped promote them and their superiority in the space. So go ahead, sign up for Chart Prime, and you're going to be getting the best indicators really out there. They're phenomenal. And right here you can see that this is a breaker block, right? This is where there are a bunch of buy orders, and this is very unlikely to slice through. Now, it did slice through yesterday all the way down a wick, right? but more than likely realistic price action, not just price action on charts lower, timeframes lower than the 1 hour. More than likely, that's not going to be able to settle much further below 41,600. Now, it easily could. We could easily see, not easily, but we could see a move lower. But as you can see back here, it tested this before it was really significant. It tested this line of support and was able to use that as a launch pad to go higher. Bitcoin was, right? Again, usually on this morning show, 9 a.m. morning show, we usually don't go this deep into the charts, but we also usually don't get a 7% pullback. So we're taking a look at Bitcoin on the 1 hour charts. We'll probably circle back to it before the end of the show, but let's go ahead and cycle over to the chat and see how everybody's doing. Again, we saw Kelly. We also are getting to see here. Gia S was the first comment. Dylan Martinez said hi to Gia as the second comment. And then Brian D said, good morning, good people. So we've got a lot of really great support in the chat. And Kelly Kellum was like number 5 in the chat saying fam. So that's awesome. Looks like we got a new name here. Puddles said, heyo. So if you're not new, apologize, but I don't think I've seen that name before. I like that art there. Puddles. Eric Wallen in the chat, of course. Crypto Mini Bike, Indie Rock Crypto, rocking out with us. And let's keep moving on. Let's see. Kelly said, all we can do is share thoughts, collect info, and make our own decisions. Community and different channels help flesh out situations you may not see or challenge your bias, but it's needed for a healthy look. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I believe I actually saw a clip of Kelly this morning issuing a little bit of a warning, that the exuberance, the euphoria actually was starting to hit quite a high, right? And that's a recipe for a move lower. And that's what we got, right? So Kelly Kellum, did he predict this? I think that he was putting out the information for you to be correctly positioned in the event that this was to take place, right? And mainly what that means is don't have a leverage long, right? Don't have a leverage long and, don't have anything invested that you can't afford to lose. So those are the main lessons, right, that we should learn. If you have gotten clapped in this move, you're not alone. Okay, $330 million in crypto longs have been liquidated as Bitcoin tumbles below. Now, hopefully, these were all folks who were leverage trading with money that they could afford to lose. Probably not, though, right, which is unfortunate. Okay, but $330 million handed over to the bears, essentially, right? And that's not good, right? It's not good. Now, Bitcoin, before the move, Bitcoin looked like it was in a classic flag pattern. I was actually down in Daytona, Florida with Army Piper, and we were having a really good time, and we were looking at the charts thinking, man, this is a classic bull flag setup. It's gonna do really well, and it didn't. Something happened, and we're gonna get to what happened here in just a second. Kelly saying exactly, gotta love it. So good to see it in the chat, Kelly. Indy called it baby. Absolutely. Indie Rock Crypto said, I had bear vibes and make a post on X, and literally a few minutes later, the drop dropped. There you go. Yeah. Well, that's pretty big there. That's pretty big. Got to give a shout out for Indie Rock Crypto, bringing up the energy with a right on the spot, right on the dot prediction there for Bitcoin. That's pretty incredible. Big props to you, Indie Rock Crypto. He's really got his thumb on the pulse of trading. Got to love it. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and see if we can perform a biopsy on what happened here. But what I'll say is that really this should not be a surprise to you. Yes, there was an event that we may be able to ascribe a fundamental reason for why there was a pullback, but this should not surprise you guys. I'm going to clean this up really quick just so that we can look at this a little bit more bare. This move lower, what does it look like? Well, it looks exactly like this move higher, right? We gave back this line of support, right? We gave that back, and now we're trading below it, right? And that line would be 42,400. Now we're below that. It's going to take some bullish pressure to form an argument that Bitcoin at this phase needs to be worth more than that, right? That's what we're really up against here. At the end of the day, all we're trying to do is value a digital asset, okay? And the market obviously values it very highly, right? We value one Bitcoin at 41, almost $42,000 for one digital asset. You have to zoom out and take a step back and say that is incredible that even happens, right? There's cars coming off of there's brand new vehicles coming out of the manufacturing plants that aren't even worth that much money, and one Bitcoin, essentially one line of encrypted code is worth that much money if you own that line of code. Okay, so it's very, very interesting, and we have to remember that is really what we're working with here. And day after day, we see the prices go up, they go down, and we're ultimately trying to value what this is. Now, I have a lot of Bitcoin, right? And a lot of you in the chat, you have a lot of Bitcoin too, okay? But we're just backing up. You really shouldn't be surprised here that we saw a pullback. If you are, that means one of two things. Either you're new to crypto, which is awesome. That's the appropriate situation that you should be in if you're surprised by this. If you're new to crypto, if you're new, especially to the Investing Bros, go ahead and consider subscribing here. Well, we try to bring you the latest fundamental and technical analysis in crypto that is going to affect your portfolio, right? And if you're new, it's okay. You can be forgiven in being surprised here because you have no frame of reference, right? You have no frame of reference. Maybe you're coming from the stock world where Tesla is similarly as volatile and unpredictable, right? Maybe you're coming from penny stocks, right? Maybe you're coming from all kinds of different places, but more than likely, if you're shocked by this, it's because you're new, and that's okay. If you're shocked by this, but you've been invested in Bitcoin for more than 6 months, shame on you, right? You shouldn't be surprised by this. This was bound to happen. We have been getting, ultimately, maybe not lucky, but the market, you can make the argument that the market has been overvaluing Bitcoin for where it is right now in this slice of time. Now, of course, I would make the argument that the market overall is greatly undervaluing Bitcoin. And that is evident because of the fact that I'm refusing to sell it here at a pullback, right? So we have to always consider kind of what we're thinking here at the macro level. What really are the bets that we are making? And incrementally, when are those bets being proven right or proven wrong? Today, your bet isn't being proven wrong. That's the real point. The Bitcoin thesis has gone absolutely nowhere, right? We still have ETF approval likely in January 10th, right? Or at least Q1, okay? We also have the halving in April, okay? That's not going anywhere. Nobody has announced that the halving is delayed, right? The halving can't be delayed, really. And 10-year Treasury yields. Let's take a look at those. Another major catalyst of why there has been significant rotation into crypto and Bitcoin specifically. So those yields are actually ticking up this morning. You can take a look, but taking a look at the 10-year Treasury yield, you can see that there has been a high reached, 5%, right? Waking up there, and a move to the downside, right? So what does that mean, right? That means that there is less of an incentive to buy bonds because that yield is coming down. What does that mean? That basically frees up liquidity, and money wants to chase equities, and it wants to chase crypto, and it wants to chase other things just in general, right? Okay, so that's something also to remember, that is a major thesis for Bitcoin, right? After mid-October. That is a lot of the reason why you've seen a rotation into Bitcoin. So none of those three theses have been invalidated. Now, what has happened? Well, we're going to get into it in just a second. But I told you that these indicators that I've been using to kind of help me predict where Bitcoin may be moving from Chart Prime, you can actually get them, right? You right now can go get those indicators, and right here you can see this is the Dynamic Pro, the Market Dynamics Pro, and you can see that on the weekly chart, it is accurately shown a nice line of resistance here in the equilibrium zone, right? And now we're trading in that zone on the weekly chart, and if we were to move lower, right, if we were to break through 40, I think it was 41,500, right, back down on the 1 hour chart, right, you can see that the next zone would be all the way down here at 16,000. That's something you would want to know, right, where the averages of holders are. and where those zones are going to be, right? And that's just 1/16, right, of the potential of the chart prime indicators, right? Let's turn on the other indicator out here on the weekly. You can see the dynamic reactor, right? A lot of folks trade based on this dynamic reactor, and out on the weekly chart, you can see that the dynamic reactor right now is rocking out down at 28,000, right? Now, a lot of folks are thinking that 32,000 is going to be tested, right? It may not be in this specific bearish event, but 32,000 may be where we see Bitcoin come back down to. That's where I have a line drawn on from these highs back here on the 17th of April and July 10th. But the dynamic reactor is actually saying that there's a good argument for Bitcoin coming all the way down and testing 28,000. That's something you would want to know. And with Chart Prime, you can know that. You can also see that overall Bitcoin is very bullish, right? Because you can see the trend assistant here is green, and we're still under a buy rating, right? So that's positive, bullish confluence. That's why a lot of people are continuing to DCA into Bitcoin. Okay, now this is a free indicator from Chart Prime, but this is the Ichimoku on the weekly chart, still squarely in the bullish zone for the Ichimoku oscillator, which is very bullish, right? For those of you who are shaking in your boots thinking, should I sell? That should be a big indication that we are still squarely in a bullish move, and that what we've seen last night and this morning is just a pullback, a healthy correction. If that hasn't been clear to you yet, I'm sorry I haven't made that clear. But yeah, this is a healthy correction that you should not be shocked by unless you're new to crypto. If you're new to crypto, that's okay. If you're new to trading any kind of asset, that's all right. You can be forgiven. Welcome to the community. Welcome to Investing Bros. But if you're not new to crypto, the fact that this surprises you, that is a problem. You should probably reconsider how much you're invested in crypto. And I'm not just saying that. Genuinely, if you are surprised by this pullback and you are invested in crypto, you need to rethink what you're doing. I'm not saying leave crypto. I'm not saying sell everything, right? I'm saying you need to rethink what you're doing, okay? Because I'll tell you right now, when I look at this pullback, all I'm thinking is, could this go lower so that I can buy more, right? I'm not thinking, oh no, if I lose this money, I won't be able to pay my rent. I won't be able to eat food this week. I won't be able to buy Christmas presents for my parents and for my fiance. Like, no, those are bad thoughts. Those are thoughts that are hopefully indicating to you, if you're having any kind of approximate thoughts like that, then that means that you are overinvested, you are undereducated about what you're invested in, and you need to have a healthy relook back into why you were invested in this and why these digital assets are valuable in the first place, okay? Because I have made, and a lot of the folks in the chat here have made conscious decisions to invest in these digital assets because we deeply understand their value and their positioning in this new economy that we are in, right? And that has a lot of depth to it. Let's go ahead and get into Tether and the Tether news here that may give us a little bit of a fundamental analysis on what is going on. But before I do, the Chart Prime link right here, 45% discount off your first month or quarter purchase, 45% discount for these indicators. If you're new to crypto, you absolutely want to get your hands on these if you're thinking about trading, so that you can know the levels that Bitcoin may be going to and other assets as well. Tether's new sanctions froze 161 wallets, only 11 hold USDT. So this is a pretty big event. We're going to get into the details right here. Tether announced yesterday that it would be blocking wallets sanctioned by the United States from using its stablecoin USDT. Now, we saw an event like this 2 weeks ago where Tether went ahead and froze the accounts that were associated with some specific criminal groups, right? Now they're going ahead and freezing wallets across the board for those that are associated with sanctioned individuals and sanctioned entities. Its new sanctions affect 161 Ethereum wallets, 150 of which hold no USDT at all. Of the remaining 11, one wallet holds 87% of the 3.5 million USDT. Okay. Another moved hundreds of thousands of tokens the day before the freeze. So, we don't try to predict what's going on in the criminal world. That's not our shtick, and honestly, we have zero edge of that. So I don't know why that would happen, why there would be thousands moved before the freeze, but it sounds to me like there was potentially a tip, right, from Tether, perhaps, or some entity affiliated with Tether who knew that this freeze was about to come out. But that's kind of not the story here. The story is ultimately that Tether is now showing that it is essentially willing to be compliant with the U.S. government and take a pretty big step. Again, this is not the first time it's done this. It did this about 2 weeks ago, and it's done it before, where it is freezing the actual coins, and that's that belong to people, right? It's very controversial. It's very controversial. I don't think that I'm here to really tell you whether or not this is the right thing for Tether to do. It's much more important for you, for your crypto portfolio, why this is happening and if this is likely to continue and affect the crypto markets in general. In its announcement, Tether framed the move as a voluntary step to proactively prevent any potential misuse of Tether tokens and enhance security measures. It's unclear if any of the wallets held USDT tokens at one point or how many. Okay, so it's a very, very interesting move here from Tether, as, again, you've got to imagine that they've got a lot of pressure from international regulators saying, hey, you guys are essentially aiding and abetting criminals, and it's got to stop, right? And that pressure has built to a point, also in an environment where CZ has been made to step down from Binance. This environment has created pressure on these very old crypto institutions that are now, moving based on what TradFi, based on U.S. establishment, U.S. government is telling them to do. So let's go ahead and get into one actually pretty bullish story. Let's go ahead and get into that. Goldman Sachs sees Fed delivering first rate cut in Q3 2020-24. So that's something to look into. Goldman Sachs has issued this, and it's definitely not something we want to ignore because that has been very important, these Fed rates and Fed cuts. So I'm not going to linger on this one too much, guys, but that is also here in the landscape of news, the only other really important news that I was seeing this morning. So is there a cut and dry reason why Bitcoin has corrected 7%, now more than 7%, in less than 24 hours? There's not a cut and dry reason. However, this news with Tether, to me, seems to be the reason why folks in the market went ahead and forwent the practice of diamond hands, right? They sold. Someone had to sell in order for the price to come lower, and I think it was more than likely either it was definitely profit-taking. There was a good bit of profit-taking, but it was also folks getting shook out by this Tether headline, that Tether is now, freezing tokens that are in wallets. So, so what should you do? Should you sell all your crypto? Should you buy more? For me, I'm waiting. I'm waiting to buy more because I do think that there are some levels below where we are now at 41,800 that do want to be tested, is one way to describe it. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Another way to look at this here is that if you look at the daily chart here for Bitcoin, the midline of the Bollinger Band was also pretty good support. Now, it went through it, but it did provide approximate support here at 40,000 for that wick lower. Okay, so that is going to be another level to watch as well. Let's go ahead and cycle over to the chat and see what is rocking out here. This is adoption, TradFi and government regulating crypto said Web3 me. Indie Rock Crypto said turds of a tether flock together. You spent some time putting some work into that one there, Indie Rock Crypto. We appreciate it. We might get to 32K ever again if you consider the macro. We might not get to 32K if I consider the macro. It's possible. It's possible. By macro, I'm assuming you mean that there's not a better alternative than Bitcoin, right? That's what we've seen on the charts over the last couple weeks, right? Folks are saying, I don't want these dollars. I don't want these euros. I don't want these altcoins. I don't want these treasury bonds. I want Bitcoin. That is what people are saying again and again and again, with varying levels of conviction, varying levels of education, but they are saying that because they're swapping those assets for Bitcoin, right? And the price has gone up. And the macro has definitely been an big influence on that. The ETF approval in January could be a big influence on that. The halving in April, very big influence on that. And the 10-year Treasury yields coming down after reaching a high of 5%, also contributing to that, right? So all of that, and that is the macro I think that you're referring to, is those treasury yields finding a peak, right? So ultimately, this is a pullback. Why it happened seems to be that Tether news, right? Folks who aren't familiar with crypto kind of seeing that move, or folks who are very familiar with crypto seeing that move and saying, yeah, I just don't want to be a part of this right now. I want to see how this plays out with the U.S. government's relationship with these stablecoin operators, Tether and Circle, that operates and issues USDC. I want to see how this plays out before I continue to deploy. And some of them are saying before I even continue to hold these digital assets, because it's not just Bitcoin that sold off, right? Bitcoin's kind of the canary in the cave mine, the important one, but you're also seeing a repricing of pretty much crypto across the board, right? You're seeing red across the screen here. Optimism Chain being a pretty big exception to that, up 7% actually. BNB up 1%. So you do have some interesting exceptions here, but Bitcoin down 4.4%, Ethereum down 5.4%, and then it's just red across the screen. Okay. Now, buying the dip is kind of the obvious thing to do here. However, I would say that we could go lower. 32,000 wasn't tested, and that is a level that I think a lot of folks are expecting a test down to. That would put us all the way back down here, guys. That would be quite a big movement from where we are right now. 32,000 would be a 23% shed for Bitcoin, right? So it's something to think about, that at 32,000 is a very real possibility for Bitcoin to go test down to. And we'll see. We'll see if that happens. I'm not sure that it will. I know that we've seen throughout all this price movement that there were a lot of buyers in Bitcoin. But are those buyers exhausted? Are those buyers out of fresh powder? Are those buyers finding alternatives in equities? Equities now, because Bitcoin has been doing so well, equities, you can make the argument, equities are underbought, right? So there's a lot of different factors here, but ultimately you have to stick to your thesis, right? And your thesis has not changed. The Bitcoin halving is still happening. There's still a high % chance that the ETFs could be approved for the spot Bitcoin. And also the 10-year treasuries yields are indeed have peaked out and are continuing lower. Now today they're higher, right? But if that trend continues to move higher, then you could see a structural rotation of Bitcoin back into treasuries, U.S. treasuries. So it's very important to remember. Crypto Billy in the chat saying, personally, I would love it to get down to 32K for selfish reasons, of course. Now, that is the other side of the coin here, is that the more experience you've had it now, Crypto Billy has had a lot of experience in crypto, right? The more experience you've had in these markets of digital assets, the more that you're inclined to say, man, I wish that they would come down. Now, why is that the case? It's because the most experienced investors in general, before they buy an asset, they try to do everything they can to spread fear about that asset, right? If I'm a billionaire and I know that soybeans are going to be very valuable in the future, right? I'm doing everything I can to get the manufacturers of soybeans, right? The farmers, the producers, the processors, and the distributors to think in their minds, man, this soybeans are going down. Nobody's going to be buying these soybeans, and I'm paying media outlets, I'm paying farmer influencers, whatever I can do to try to spread fear about soybeans, so that my thesis never changes because I know the truth that soybeans are going to be higher demanded in the future, or at least demanded in the same way, right? I'm going out and I'm spreading a reason why they shouldn't be, but I know the truth, right? So then when the manufacturers say, well, I guess I'll switch over to corn, right? And they sell their equipment in the market, or they say, man, the distributors say, yeah, we're not going to try to distribute over the next 5 years as much soy, right? And they sell equipment and they lose connections that I can then go make, right? That's what you want to do, right? And you only get there after you've spent a lot of time in markets and trying to understand the way that market dynamics of supply and demand actually happen and how they can be manipulated at a very, very high level. Once you understand how to do that as well. So Crypto Billy, somebody who's very, very knowledgeable about crypto, right? He's thinking, man, I'm glad because I think I can buy this lower. Now, he doesn't have the means to go out and spread FUD necessarily in the market, right? But a lot of people do, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring the price lower intentionally of Bitcoin and other crypto assets so that they can buy. And of course, that's an argument that we make very, very often here on the Investing Bros. That shouldn't be foreign to you, really, if you've been tuning in for any amount of time. But that is definitely the case. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It is December 11th, so it's actually my birthday today. I've had a real pleasure bringing you all the fundamental analysis for this pullback in Bitcoin we've seen. Now, we'll check back in just before we sign off here. It's about an hour going back down to the hourly charts here. I want to throw on the Market Dynamics Pro to see where we are in proximity to that breaker block. Yeah, and so we're rocking right around where it was when we first started analyzing Bitcoin here. But guys, go ahead. If you haven't watched Tim's 8:30 video on technical analysis for crypto, you're going to want to do that. He went much more in depth, and he's out of a lot more hours on the charts to learn how to predict essentially the future prices of these assets. I highly encourage you to go watch his video if you have not already. But I've been T-Shroom, and I think that the major fundamental analysis reason for why we are seeing a pullback is because of that Tether headline, right? But there could be more news released of why there was a pullback. But ultimately, you should not be surprised here at this pullback because we have been overbought, right? And that's okay. We've been overbought for the cycle, not overbought in general, not overbought in the macro. Bitcoin should and will be priced much higher here in the future. At least that's my belief, not financial advice. Thank you so much for watching. We will be live today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we hope that you'll be joining us back here on the Investing Bros. Like the video on the way out, and if you've got value from this video, make sure that you subscribe. I'm headed over to Piper Academy to watch what's going on over there, and I hope you do too as well. Bye-bye.
Trying to make paper. Turn that better to cake. Money like Lego. Connect the dots that bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros. Army pipe, lethal on trade. Entries and exits, worthy of praise. Tim, the professor of the TA. Shouted out loud on the PA. T-Shroom's news got the word. Doing better than what he deserves. Beamer, leave no evidence. Soon fly coop with his dividend. Trying to make paper. Turn that better to cake. Money like Lego. Connect the dots that bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros.